Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organizations. Each and every episode, we sit down with experts from various fields from around the world, just like you're grabbing a coffee with them, to dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So go grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. Well, have you ever asked yourself, how do I keep leading when I feel completely drained? If so, today's episode is for you. And I feel blessed because I've asked myself that question. Welcome to the Speak with People podcast. We believe healthy communication is the heartbeat of great leadership. I know that many of you listening today are high capacity leaders. We are high performers. We're trying to do it all. But here's the truth. You weren't meant to lead on empty. That's why I'm so thrilled to welcome our first two-time guest back to the podcast.
That's right.
She's a longtime friend. We'll talk about that. I don't know how long, but it's been a long time. She's the founder and CEO of Azer & Co. She's coached thousands of leaders, Olympians, executives, everyday difference makers to lead from a place of wholeness, not burnout. And we're going to talk about that today. What that actually means, how to apply it to your leadership, and the steps that you could take today to start thriving again. So get ready for a deep transformational conversation. April, welcome back to the Speak with People podcast.
Hey, my friend, it's really good to be with you and your audience. I'm very proud to be your first two-timer guest and how far this incredible podcast has come. Well done. Very proud of
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, it's kind of insane. You know, most podcasts, I can't remember the number, don't get past 10 episodes. And so, here we are. Keep going.
And let's just say you're top 2% globally.
Yeah, there's that as well.
There's a real good correlation to the number of episodes and this top 2%. So I'm here for it. Let's have a great conversation.
I love it. Well, hey, before we hop into this, because this is, my goodness, this is so needed, incredible conversation that we need to have. Tell us a little bit more about you, your story, what you do, what's kind of got you to this place.
Yeah, this conversation is important to me because it's been my journey. It's been my life story. And I think there was like a moment probably in 2005, 20 years ago, when I first experienced coaching. And that coach helped to shift the trajectory to where I think if I would not have had Dr. Jack Ruppel in my life, I would have been careening towards burnout, and I would have probably destroyed my marriage. I probably would have had a really fractured relationship with my children. Like, it literally was a trajectory shift that altered the state of my leadership. And that was in my mid-20s. But I think the catalyst and maybe the calcification of this journey was in probably 2013. And I was about to make a pretty significant shift in my vocation. And I knew that some things really also needed to shift. I had 3 kids under the age of 4. I was the executive leader in my organization. I was traveling the country nationally and speaking. I had just published my first book. So life was very full and I was moving very fast. And I knew that this was unsustainable. And yet there were still a lot of components that were really good and really important to me. And I felt like something needed to shift kind of on a foundational level in order for me to continue to be able to do all of the things and be all of the things that I knew that I was supposed to be. So that was kind of probably the biggest shift was back in 2013-ish.
Wow. Absolutely incredible. And it's amazing as you look back at those shifts, exactly, what happens as you kind of keep going. I wish, I'll be 50 in September. And,
it's coming for you.
Yeah. There are, especially running a small business, there are some days where it's like I sit down at my computer in the morning and then I close the computer late at night and you're like, oh, like that, there's no shortage of activities, things to create, prospecting, all that kind of stuff. So when we talk about this kind of idea of leading with wholeness, this kind of holistic leadership, this, drive towards being
Hmm.
healthy. Why does that matter even more today as we kind of look forward?
Yeah. I think it matters for a couple of reasons. One is, I mean, I'm a few years younger than you are, but for folks that are in, our generation or above, we have seen what leadership has been modeled and described and defined as successful, and it hasn't worked. There's a It was defined and described as like a lot of compartmentalization and segmentation, and you've got your work life and your personal life, and if something is not working at home, you just shut it off and you go to work and you do your thing. And we just have seen now just the laundry list of leaders who have blown out their life, who have died at early ages, who have not finished well in the work that they've done. And so clearly that isn't working, for those that are, maybe 40s and above. For those that are younger, I think it's a really important conversation because work is available now 24
Hmm.
7 between working at home, which I am right now. So are you. We're both working from home. COVID kind of launched us into just the bleeding of all of the worlds. And then we have these devices that we hold in our hands and we open up 200 or 300 times a day, where we swipe through the series of apps and we spend, 8 to 10 hours a day on our phones. And so the accessibility of work and just the blurring of the personal and the professional leaves for hardly any margin for folks unless
Mm.
you choose to do some things differently and you create some different frameworks. And so yeah, I think it's a combination effect of like, we've seen what doesn't work in leadership, and we also have seen now like there's a different way to engage with the everyday work life that also is not working very well. So we need a different way forward.
Wow. Wow, I can't remember which resource I was reading it in, but there's every once in a while there's a push, for the 4-day work week, for
Mhm.
especially right now, there's a giant push to get people back in the office, at least be
Yep.
there 1 day or 2 days or 3 days,
Hmm.
and people are trying to, navigate and through
Yep.
all of that. And so it is so fascinating to think through. We work all the time, and especially the younger generation. It's just crazy to me to think,
Hmm.
especially Gen Z. I've got kids in Gen Z, first pure digital generation. Like they want stuff done to, right now, so quick. Speak right now to maybe the older leaders who are managing, leading that younger generation. What are some landmines you can help them, steer away from as they lead that younger generation, as that generation is, on their device even more? I don't. uh,
Hmm.
Let me stop there. I don't know for sure
I
because
don't know.
I'm
That's true.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
addicted to my device, so
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, if you just take a second, speak into that, leading that younger generation, what to look for, how to lead them in a healthy way and encourage them.
It's funny because my initial gut response to that question is I don't know that we have a lot to give to them in that.
Mm,
I think we're learning alongside of each other in how to do that. Both sides of that generational gap are struggling with different components of the always on.
right.
So I think that what older leaders can do is more share their stories of what's not working. Like in the 20, 30, 40 years that we have been giving the best 40 plus hours a week of our lives to work, here's what we know is unsustainable, is not healthy, has caused disruption and brokenness in our personal lives, in our advancement, in the fulfillment of our potential. It's probably more like wounding stories and like painful sagas of like, yeah, what not to do, maybe than what we can do, because we're struggling with some of that as well.
Absolutely. So twice in the last week, it was pretty interesting. Last week, I'm in a room with branch managers from a small kind of mid-sized bank in Central Florida. 16 of them, and the number one frustration that just kept coming up
Mm.
was, how do I get my younger employees to communicate? How do I
Hmm.
get them to look customers in the eye? How do I, get them to understand that there is a start time? And
Hmm.
we give the younger generation a hard time for that.
Yeah.
It really is, across the board, but for whatever reason, they get the heart of that. And then a couple of days ago, I'm interviewing a guy in the podcast from LA, and he's a mid-career coach, which he just
Mm,
purely helps people in their mid-career find jobs and pivot and
mhm,
deal with things like, okay, I'm 49, I'm getting offered this job, but my boss is 29. And so how
mhm,
do I,
mhm.
how do I do that? Because they're so smart
Yeah.
and they're so it's seemingly like my son, it seems like he could do things, in
Rapid
like
speed.
in a second of the time. It's the old Michael Scott,
Mhm.
I love Jim Halpert, but for what it takes me a day, he can do it in an hour,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it's just that kind
Mhm,
of craziness. And so, yeah, especially as leaders, how do we approach, especially in workplaces, when there's all these generations and we get set in our way, maybe some thoughts and advice
mm,
about,
mm,
how to approach those generations, how to meet them halfway. Would love your thoughts on that.
mhm. Yeah, I've been a believer for a really long time that we're better together and that we
Mm,
belong to one another. Before I started my company, that was a huge part of the work that I did, was like, how do we bring generations together? Because we have so much to learn from one another.
yep.
So I think my favorite quality in another leader is curiosity.
Mhm.
When you are curious, you cannot be judgmental. And curiosity then shows up in our behaviors like, help me understand. I don't know what you're talking about here. Tell me more about that. What I think I heard was this. I don't know anything about that. Can you tell me
Wow.
more?
Yep.
And all of those phrases could be said by a 50 something or by a 20 something,
Yes.
depending on what the subject matter is. And so I just believe our workplaces, our world would be so much better if we are connecting across all kinds of lines, whether it's generational, whether it's racial, whether it's gender, whether it's age. There is so much to learn from one another, and curiosity is the vehicle by which we will do it because
Wow.
it is a humble posture. I know a lot of things. I've got a zone of genius. I have done a lot of work. There are some really great things that I can bring to a team and a conversation and to my coaching work. That's why you're having me as a guest for the second time, right? Like there's some things that I can contribute. There's a whole lot of stuff I know nothing about.
Right.
And so when I can be curious and like ask some questions, it'll get me a long way.
Ooh. Wow. Wow. Well, that was worth the price of admission. Incredible.
The check's in the
My
mail.
my first vehicle was a 1982 Datsun Nissan, tiny little car, but the fuel gauge didn't work, and I would have to guesstimate based on how much gas I had left by how many miles I went. And in this was Detroit area many years ago. Running out of gas in February in Detroit is just not fun. And yet here we are all these years later. Leaders have more tools, more
Yeah.
assessments, more advancements, more technology. We have a watch
Mhm.
on our wrist that tells us how healthy we are. Why is
Mhm.
it that sometimes leaders it's like, oh my goodness, I hit burnout, or
Yeah.
I can't get out of bed today, or how is it that we just get to that brink so fast, as especially with all this stuff that we have available to us.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think that information and self awareness even create the illusion of transformation.
Mm,
So we have access to more information than we've ever had before in the history of humanity, right? It is just a Google click away. It's 0.001 seconds, and you can have the answer to almost anything. You add an AI, and holy crap, you can integrate and connect and download. I did like 2 hours worth of research in 4 seconds right before we hopped on this call for some work that I'm doing to consolidate and just grab a whole bunch of information and make it work for me. But the same is true for self awareness, right? Like I know that I am not naturally a patient person. That is not my strong suit. I want things now. I want things fast. I am fire ready, aim. Let's go. Those two things, getting the information and also knowing things to be true about yourself, don't create any change. If anything, they actually can raise your despair level
wow.
because they acknowledge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And so I think that one of the reasons why leaders are having a really difficult time managing stress, energy, burnout levels is because they are feeling viscerally aware of that gap, but they are not closing it. And the way
Mm.
that you close that gap is through accountability and through application. That the only way that you really transform is by doing something different and having someone hold your hand, walk alongside of you, and make sure that you're doing it. And so I think that there's some real gold in being able to like harness that kind of accountability and application.
Wow. Wow. So, how do you find that person who who can say things to you, call you on stuff? I mean, that's such a trust level.
Yeah, it is. It's a risk. And I think there's a vulnerability to it, right? And I would not say that as leaders, we are known to be people who are naturally vulnerable, or choose to like expose what we consider weaknesses or
Uh-huh.
faults or tender spots. Um, but that's where I'm most passionate is helping leaders to do that kind of work, because I know that what comes on the other side of it is really important. So yes, read books, listen to podcasts, all of that. But I think what's most important is you hire somebody who is going to hold you accountable and make sure that you do the things that you say that you want to do so that you get the results that you want.
Wow.
Um, when we pay for those types of things, we tend to get really good results. And there's lots of folks out there, myself included, that would love to work with you so that you can become the person that you want to be and you can lead in the ways that get you the influence and the impact that you know that you can have.
It's amazing how much you can do on your own. Like it really is. Like
Yeah.
get a big chip on your shoulder, put get the big ass planning calendar, all the
Mhm.
resources that are out there. But that moment you swipe, you're
Yep.
like, okay, it's on. Like I
Yeah.
better do
Totally.
this because we're
Yeah.
so tied to those dollars. And when that
Mhm.
coach or that person calls us and says, "Hey, why didn't you have that done?"
Yeah.
Whoo.
The swipe is also tied to our ego, right?
Well,
Because
yeah.
if we say to somebody, I'm going to get these things done, and then you show up on the next call and you haven't gotten it done, that accountability is like, it does something internally to you. So it's really good to be paying for. And, leaders can and do a great job of that a lot of times. But I think that that's where a lot of the secret sauce is at.
Yeah. So, leaders, it's important to keep, checking in on your progress, your health. You guys offer a wholeness assessment. There's assessments out there. Why is it
Yeah.
important to take like the time? Because even in our trainings, we provide an assessment. I can see some
Yeah.
eye rolls in the room, like, oh, here we go.
Here we go again.
But I mean, I went through an assessment about a month ago with a thing, and like my eyes were, I was like, okay, no, that's not me. And they're like, no, that's you. So walk us
You
through
said
just,
so.
that the importance of that.
Yeah. Well, I think that the assessments are really helpful because they do kind of provoke that self awareness. And so, what you don't know about yourself can and will hurt you and others. What you do know about yourself can also lead you towards your next breakthrough, the next level, the ability to show up more aligned with who you are. So, I love assessments in that way. I think that a mentor told me years and years ago, she said that a leader needs to be the most self aware person in the room. And I was like, well, what if you're in a room with a whole bunch of leaders? She eye rolled me and she's like, you just do your work, April. Just stop pointing the finger back at somebody else. Do your own work. But the idea behind her words with that is that we have to have increasing self awareness in order for us to really have, again, the kind of influence and impact that we desire and to lead in a sustainable way. So those assessments help to do that. What you do with the assessment, though, is everything. Because, like I said a few minutes ago, that self awareness creates an illusion of transformation, or it could actually just reinforce your bad behavior, right? Like you could say, oh, yeah, that assessment revealed I am an impatient person. So I guess it is what it is. You get what you get. And then you're just co-signing on your own BS. That's not the point of them. The point of them is to help illuminate something that you may not already know, or to confirm what you guess, what you think may be true, and then to actually lead you toward transformation, to lead you on a pathway to actually making some changes.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I get it when I'm in rooms with, leaders of, 50 plus, especially I'm talking about communication skills. We all communicate all day long. About 90% of our day is communication. And it's like, yeah, I've been doing it since I was whatever, why change
Right.
now? And it's like, yeah, exactly it. Because if you do take those steps to be the most self-aware person in the room, not only will you succeed at a level that you never imagined, but you'll help other people succeed. And that's
Yes.
the incredible powers. So to speak for a second to the leaders who are working for companies, organizations who really don't believe in this level of growth, vulnerability, assessment, outside of
Mhm.
like quitting tomorrow, what are some
Mhm.
steps they can take to kind of protect themselves? Because maybe that type of culture celebrates the burnout, celebrates the work at a pace that you'll
Mhm.
never, be able to understand.
Yeah, I think those are really difficult spots for leaders when they recognize that there might be a gap between where they are and who they want to become and what they want to achieve, and then who's signing their paychecks. So I have a lot of grace and empathy, compassion for folks that are realizing there's misalignment there. But I think that that is an important conversation, because if you know that there is a misalignment, that means that you need to do something different in order to get into a place where there is greater alignment. And there are more and more of these conversations happening all over the place. And I think that there are more and more workplaces that are understanding and really embodying that you have to lead holistically.
Mm.
You're not a robot. You're not a zombie. You're not a punch card that you are just a series of, your results, your KPIs, your metrics, that you're a human being. And so I think that if you're in a place that, kind of how you described it, is pretty toxic, um, that's also a really great time to get yourself a coach
Mm.
to help you figure out what a transition could look like, because obviously you have realities like paying bills and making sure that your kids are fed. But
Wow.
you cannot stay in a place like that long term and become the fullest version of yourself and achieve your potential
Mm.
if the environment is going to kick the life out of you.
Yeah. Wow. 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 So, whew, that's good. So, turning the wheel a little bit. Uh, we've talked about some things that really are going to take some humility, and we don't like to
Hmm.
admit our weakness. We don't like to admit, maybe how far down we are. Someone said to me not too long ago, "Oh man, looking at social media, you speak with people's just blowing up," and and I'm like, "Yeah, man, I can't wait for that to happen in the P&L as well."
Yes, and
Yes. So it's great, to be able to, and I try not to like over, you know, um, emphasize uh, the things that are happening, but I also want to celebrate and, being able to look forward. But to get to that like deeper level of vulnerability where you
Mhm,
go, okay, but,
mhm,
here's the tough part. How do we communicate our needs sometimes to our coach or our spouse or
mm,
partner or our
mhm,
teammate or our boss, without that like, "Ooh, I'm weak, I'm incapable,"
mhm.
you know, just
Yeah,
kind of at that place where you're going, "Okay, I need the help to be able to get out of this place."
yeah. Well, words like weak and incapable to me are like trigger words, because those words are associated to me with some of that old leadership language
Mm,
that is a lie. It is unhelpful and it is untrue.
yeah.
You are not weak because you have needs. You are not incapable because you are struggling. You are a human being,
Mm,
period. And human beings have weaknesses. Human beings have limitations. Human beings have limits. Those are just inextricably true, but
yeah.
they are not the full story of who you are. It's not the
Mm,
wholeness of who you are as a person. And so I think I would first start by saying you got to acknowledge the lie
mm,
that these things are not inextricably true of you. They are not the fullness of your story. But then to the larger part of your question of how do you express those needs, it takes some effort as a leader to do some inner work to figure out what is actually not working, what is no longer serving me well, where am I feeling the gaps, what is what is a kind of a longing that exists, what do I want that I'm not currently getting. And sometimes those questions like ooze out of you like a volcano, and it's just like right underneath the surface. And if you sit with somebody for more than a minute, those answers will come pouring out of you. And that's a really good sign that like you are really desperate for some change and you're ready for it. Other times it may take some work over time. I used to actually, years and years ago when I first started coaching, I would ask folks, what do you want? That was like the first question I would ask. And a lot of times I got met with like this blank stare and like, holy shit moment, like, I don't know how to answer that question. Because for a lot of us, we are busy answering that question for everyone else. What does our boss want? What do our coworkers want? What does our spouse want? What do our kids want? What does our budget want? Like we are asking and answering that question for everyone else, but not for ourselves. So you've got to do the work there. That's again where I think an assessment could be really helpful.
Yeah.
A coach or some other mentor or guide can be really helpful to create some of that space so that those inner conversations can come out, and then you can figure out what the next step is.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. So to be able to fuel all of this, feels like we need some sustainable rhythms, maybe some habits, maybe some things that, sometimes you read stuff and you're like, well, it's great. The Olympian can swim 7 miles a day and is up at 350, but and we forget that like we're all created differently. So we probably all have different rhythms. What do you recommend? Do you recommend just kind of follow the plan, or how to create a plan, or, kind of walk us through finding those rhythms that do help create this kind of success for our leadership and our lives?
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to an assessment. I think that helps you to get a gauge of it is both objective and subjective, right? The assessment has an objectivity to it, but you are the one that is giving it the answers that feel most true and accurate for you. So those two things meet with each other, and then it kind of reveals to you where are the opportunities, where are the challenges, what is it that is the low-hanging fruit. So like when I work with leaders now, I do ask them, what do you want to achieve? What matters most to you based on that? Because we could do 100 things together. This journey of becoming a holistic leader will be every breath until your last one. There's no arrival at that point. So at any given point, there's, a collection of things that you can do, but what is it that would be most beneficial for you right now? What would serve you best? What do you want the most? And so that's a great starting point, is to really do an assessment, figure out from that, what is it that you want the most from that? What's going to give you the quickest wins or you're most motivated by? I will say that in the work that I've done with leaders, there are two areas that are most significantly challenged that we see. One is physical. A lot of leaders are not doing well physically. So whether we describe physical wholeness as that it begins with your breath, it is supported by sleep, it's fueled by food, and it's maximized by movement. It's in that order on purpose. There's a waterfall effect to those 4 parts.
Wow.
So for most leaders, I would say 95%, there's work to be done in one of those 4 areas. And the reason that is important is because your holistic leadership begins with your body.
Yeah.
That is the vehicle by which you do everything, right? You and I have both been public and open with our own audiences and the work that we do of major physical challenges that we have dealt with. And when our bodies are not doing well, everything else suffers, right? There is a consequence. There is just a domino effect when our bodies are not doing well. So I would say that is a really important step, is our leaders caring for their bodies. And research shows, gosh, we're getting abysmal sleep. And that has catastrophic impact on everything else: decision-making, relationships, communication skills, conflict management, all kinds of stuff, right? The other area that we see as really struggling with leaders is renewal. How do we recover our life? How do we experience rest and recovery? And athletes are the pros at this. They know what it looks like to perform at really high levels, but they know that they can't do that 24/7, 365. There's space and really strategic times of withdrawal and of being able to recover your life. And so I think those are two kind of bookends in the framework that we use in my work to help leaders with those, the physical and the renewal, in order to really help ensure that those things are aligned so everything else can kind of flow from that.
Wow. Well, let's start with number two because it goes against our thinking, right? Last week I
Mm-hmm.
drove 10 hours to different training events, spent 4.5 hours in front of rooms, training, speaking, meeting people, doing the whole thing. And then Friday, stupidly, I scheduled a bunch of stuff, podcast
Yeah.
interviews and, uh, you know, prospecting call. And, I
You
if
were
I would have
done.
just
You were
took the
fried.
day off because
Yeah.
3 full days of all of that adrenaline, all that, you know, I mumbled my way through all of that. Saturday, I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
recover. Why, like, is it just pride? Is it just that no one's given us the permission to go, you got to recover. Like you got to
Mm-hmm.
schedule, actually do the time to schedule your recovery time.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I think pride is a part of it. I think it's capitalism. I think it's systemic stuff of what we just think it's supposed to look like. Even the 40-hour work week, that was created during the Industrial Revolution as a result of machinery.
Yeah.
Like we don't live in a 9 to 5 world anymore. So yeah, I think there's sometimes it's permission, sometimes it's pride, sometimes it is simply awareness. Like knowing that there's a law of diminishing returns happening. If you would have taken the day off Friday and just spent time with your family, done things that increase your energy again, that help you feel rested, you could have probably hit it on Monday morning from a really different energy and momentum level than you did because
Yeah.
you ended up slugging it through.
Yeah. Yeah. And then for me, because I've done a poor job of not turning off the on sign. Saturday was work, and then Sunday was work, and then you hit the ground Monday, and you're like, okay, probably should have
Right.
taken time, but now it's work.
Yeah. Hmm.
To be able to do those things is just interesting. I watched a TV show not too long ago. It was probably a year ago, 2 years ago. I don't remember when it was. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I watched Emily in Paris, and
Oh, it's such a great show.
went through all of it. But I love the scenes where it was like, she kind of marches, to work on her first day, and nobody's there at 8 o'clock. And as I'm interviewing more and more leaders from the UK and France and all over, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, yeah, it's just a different, you Americans
Yeah.
have such a different relationship with it. And so I haven't done the research
I would
enough to
say
know. Yeah.
we have a dysfunctional relationship with work. It's not just different. I mean, our friends from other countries may be kind and gracious, but I think we have a really dysfunctional relationship with it. And I do see movement and momentum that like work is a part of our life, but work is not life. Like we don't live to work. We live to live, and
Yeah.
work gets to be a part of that. And for
Yeah.
me, and I think for you too, Jason, like work is really fun and energizing, and it's a
Yeah.
calling, and we have a mission, and we love the people that we get to work with. Like I've always felt like that about my work, but I know that there's something to pay attention to in me when I can't turn it off.
Mhm.
When I am in a conversation with my husband and I am thinking about that proposal that needs to get sent, or that follow up email that needs to get sent, or whatever the thing is, that previous conversation that I had with a client, and I'm not engaged with my favorite person on the planet. I know that there's something that needs to get adjusted in me when my work takes over everything.
Mm.
And so there's, again, like it's a holistic leadership idea that you have a whole life and your leadership is a part of that. It is not the entirety of it.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. That is powerful to be able to get to that place. Okay, so speak to, maybe sometime of the I hate to lay that out this way, but
Yeah.
there are people who strive for a higher performance than everybody else. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes, there are higher performers who just, are sitting there maybe not in that category because they're like, I'm not going to kill myself. Like I watch the high
Correct.
performers just killing themselves. And they're like, go ahead,
Yeah.
just
Bunch of dum dums.
yeah, Like, what are you doing? Like, you can only like I'm working with a client and they're like, yeah, I'm 120% of my sales goal, but it's not good enough for my boss. And I was like, wait a minute, you're at
Mm,
120%. He's like, yeah, there's another guy at 150. So, he's pushing me to, and I'm like,
yeah.
wow, like this is the environment,
Mhm.
that we're
Mhm.
in. And so maybe speak to the high performer who's, driving on the brink,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they need
Yep.
to pay attention to some of these warning lights.
Yep. I would say I'm with you. Like there's deep resonance in that. And that's who I am. I've always considered myself highly ambitious, very visionary, a creative. I've got a million goals. I want to rule the world. Like, there's
Put me
just
in charge.
high ambition. Yeah, put me in charge. Coach, put me in, and everything will be better. And I know that if I live at that rate and that speed, that it is not sustainable. It is not at human scale. So there's a couple of things that I think about for myself and for the folks that I work with. And again, the folks that I work with, we describe them as high capacity leaders.
Mm.
So they are not the folks that are just like, what's the bare minimum that I can do?
Yeah.
Like what is the least that I cannot get fired with? It's like, no, I really want to achieve all of the things and I have high ambition. So, but it's not an either or conversation. It's a both and. So I would do some cost benefit analysis.
Mm.
Like what are you gaining when you are not satisfied at 120%? Because sure as hell, we benefit from the decisions and the behaviors that we do, the decisions that we make and the behaviors that we do. We benefit from them. Otherwise, we would stop them
Yep.
because as human beings, we are rewards based.
Yep.
But there's also consequences. So, what are the prices that other people are paying for you having unbridled ambition or wanting to just perform at the highest levels with, no guardrails? What are the prices that other people are paying? And what are the consequences that you are experiencing right now and fast forward?
Mm.
Because you better believe you will see consequences in your body, in your health, in your long term relationships. And so you got to do some cost benefit analysis there. And then a question that I ask myself on the regular and clients that I have is what is the benefit if you gain the whole world and you lose your soul? You
Mm.
could substitute soul for your future, your health, your spouse, your family, uh, your 401k. You could substitute it with whatever word you want. But for me, soul is kind of the embodiment of the whole thing. And I think that there's just not benefit there. And so you've got to be able to take a step back, and there is some short-term success, but I am 45 years old. I don't ever plan to retire in a traditional sense. I have massive goals in terms of what I want to achieve in the world. But achieving those massive goals is going to require me to be in the game for the next 30 plus years, which means I can't work 80 hours a week, which requires me to turn off my phone, which requires me to
Wow.
take monthly days of silence and solitude, which I have done for the better part of 20 years, which requires me to put my phone down when my kids say, Mom, look at me, I'm talking to you.
Mm.
Like the cost benefit analysis is really important because if we are not taking a step back to really take a look at what do we want to achieve longer term,
Mm.
then we're going to get caught in the tyranny of the urgent and we're going to get caught in what other people's demands are. And that's simply not going to serve us well.
Ooh. Wow. That is ooh, that's powerful. Yeah, my wife said that to me not too long ago. She said, you're here, like, because you work from home, but you're not
But you're
here.
not here. Yeah, I've heard that.
I was like, what are you talking about? I'm here. Like, I'm in the.
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh, it's,
Yeah.
yeah. And then going back to the physical, we kind of rolled over that because, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, who wants to talk about that? But yeah, it's crazy. You get into this hole, and then the deeper you get, the muck just,
Yeah.
makes you more comfortable, kind of pulls you down, and you lose sight of the fact of like, yeah, yeah, no, I could go day after day after day eating those things, or
Mm,
everything's, falling apart, or life is
mhm,
shit. And so I'm just going to keep, eating
mhm,
whatever. those of us who eat over drink,
Yeah.
because it could be eating, drinking, it could be, whatever
Yeah.
your, that
Pick
area
your
is. But
poison.
yeah, but then as you start to get some more wins, that's
Hmm.
the powerful thing. And that's what,
Yeah.
like for me, I'm,
Yeah.
Monday will be 4 weeks without sugar. And, all of my, like, sometimes my friends are like, it's just about moderation, just, and I'm like, hey, 49, moderation doesn't work for me. It just
Hmm.
doesn't. Part of the reason why I don't
Hmm.
drink, because alcoholism runs in the family. And, I just,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just crazy stuff. And so for me, it's like, I got to go full stop. And then, the first week is absolute hell. And then the
Hmm.
second week is, a deeper level of hell. And then the third week is like, wait a minute. Oh
Is
yeah, I
that
can
light
do
at
this
the end of the
stuff.
tunnel? Hmm.
Yeah. And then no, I'm only 3.5 weeks
Yeah.
in, but you start getting closer and closer and you're like, well, that's right. I got it in me to do this, because that muck
Absolutely.
just starts to convince you that you don't have it. You got to live down there. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that is, that's just,
And that is your potential calling, Jason,
mm,
right? Like that is what is so beautiful is that the further you get removed from your potential, the more despair you live in.
ooh,
That's fine. But Soren Kierkegaard said, people find a level of despair that they can tolerate and they call it happiness.
whew,
And so even as we're talking about overwork and high performers, I think that we have found a level of despair that we can tolerate as leaders, and we've just called it happiness. And the quickest, best way for you to just raise the despair level is to stop calling things happy that aren't. Stop lying to
wow,
yourself. Stop bullshitting.
wow,
Tell yourself the truth. It's not working. Sugar in moderation for you does not work. So stop pretending like it does for you. It may work for me, but it doesn't work for you.
right.
So yeah, we got to raise the despair level and stop saying that we're happy or that we're fulfilled or that there's meaning or that it's okay when it's actually not.
Wow. So powerful. You said something earlier about, we're talking about assessments and all those kind of things. Sunday morning is like the worst for me because, it pops up on this thing, how much time I spent on it last week. And I'm like, okay, right there.
Yeah,
That
reality
gave
check.
me, the cold hearted, okay, I got to set my goal to kind of keep, you know, kind of keep doing that. Uh, wow. We could keep this going. I have like 15 other questions as we kind of round this to an end. I want to ask you to maybe speak to both those leaders. One, the leader who is, close to the burnout, who needs to
Yep.
take some steps right now, and then, speak to that leader who's, creating that margin, the healthy rhythm, and, kind of an encouragement to both of those different leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I think for the leader that is on, well, no, for both leaders, I will say only you can lead yourself holistically first.
Oof.
You're the only one that can do it. Your boss can make some demands of things, could put you on a PIP, can fire you, but only you can lead yourself holistically first. So for the leader that feels like they're on the edge, um, I would say this could become the breakdown that becomes your breakthrough, as
Mm.
cliche as that may sound. Some of the lowest parts of my life have been the impetus for change. It's like, you're in a dark place and it's time to make a shift. And so pay attention to that. Don't stuff it down, sweep it under the rug, wait for next quarter. Now is the time. Do it. Do something.
Mm.
And for the leader that is, has some sustainable rhythms, has some things that are working for them, find the momentum there and start to do some habit stacking or, engage a coach or pay attention to like just the next thing that you want that isn't working for you that feels like you could get another quick win. Because again, this is like a lifelong journey. This is not, going to be done by the end of 2025. These aren't things that can be accomplished and then checked off. Leading yourself holistically is ongoing. There are ever increasing levels. There are greater depths to which you can go. And it's required if you want to actually lead with your whole potential. So, yeah, I think that for either leader that's listening, my guess is that what is one thing that you can and want to do. So do that.
Oh, powerful. Powerful. We're building this online resource. Leaders can go and kind of get ideas for other resources to encourage them. Is there a speaker in your life you've heard, you look up
Hmm.
to every time they speak? They check all the boxes. Somebody you'd highly recommend?
Brene Brown, she's my patron saint. She is my bucket list to be on her podcast someday.
That's amazing. I love that. If you do listen to podcasts, is there a podcast that you go to, guilty pleasure or personal development, that you just highly recommend?
I listen to a lot of podcasts. I love them because you can do them while you're on the go, right? Like making dinner or whatever. I love Adam Grant's Free
Mm,
Thinking. And I think part of it is what I was saying earlier about like curiosity. And he's just a brilliant interviewer, and he has such real, I would guess, Jason, part of the reason why this podcast is so fun for you is because of the people you get to talk to, right?
mm,
Like it's so beneficial for you. It's like
100%.
you get somebody that's in a zone of genius and you get to listen and have a conversation with them for 45 minutes. And it's so beneficial for you, not to mention the benefit that your audience gets from it. So I love Adams for that reason. It helps me to rethink things that I have pretty strong opinions about or pretty strong worldviews around, and he helps me rethink.
I love that. Yeah. Sidebar. Yeah. Someone said, why do you do all this? You're not Joe Rogan. And I
Thank
was like,
God.
yeah. I said, but I'm pretty much every week I'm getting an MBA. I'm listening to leaders from
Yes.
around the world, and
Mhm.
it's incredible. Last one is
Yeah.
a book. Ooh, what book right now, boy, leaders, you gotta own this. You gotta read it. Got to go through it.
Mm, I mean, I'm gonna dovetail back to Brene Brown. I think her book Dare to Lead, and this conversation that we've been having has been seminal for me to think through how do I help leaders lead holistically. And I think that in conversations around just what does it look like to be a human being who leads at high levels, nobody does it better.
Wow, I love it. April, so incredible. You would come back a second time. Such an honor that you're. I probably need to send you some type of jacket, like SNL. Does they have the jackets for their multiple hosts. What's the best place we can send our listeners, get your resources, who you are, your coaching,
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, our website, azarandco.com, is the best place. On the homepage, there is an assessment called the Whole Leader Snapshot. Or you could go to azarandco.com/snapshot. And we've talked about assessments like 15 times in this conversation. That's a really good place to get an idea as to how you're really doing and what is it that you might want to do in the next step.
Mm, sounds great. Again, thank you. Appreciated your friendship over the years. Appreciate your voice online. Thank you so
Same
much
friend.
for being such a great friend and speaking truth into me. So appreciate your time on today's podcast.
Hey, it's been almost 20 years since we met. So it's
20
been
years.
really encouraging and really fun to see the different iterations of our own stories and our own leadership journeys and raising families and all of that. So proud of you and glad to work alongside of you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Speak with People podcast. It means the world to us when you share this episode. Thanks for liking, subscribing, or following the podcast. That really does help the podcast get into more ears and into more leaders listening. Also, don't forget, we have 2 exciting resources for you. The first is go to Facebook and join the Speakers Group. This is a community designed for leaders who want to grow their communication skills. Also, go to speakwithpeople.com/skills library to access the Communication Skills Library. It is an online resource chock filled with resources that will inspire you and transform you and grow your communication skills. Thanks again for being a part of the listening community. We cannot wait for the next episode.